There's nothing like Broadway, kid, nothing so grand, where each purple feather is perfectly found.
Hello and welcome to the Nothing Like Broadway podcast. I am your host, writer-composer David Rackoff of the upcoming off-Broadway musical Nothing Like Broadway. And this is the podcast where every week we pick a song from musical theater and then we pick it apart to find out how it works. And today we are doing Over at the Frankenstein Place from the Rocky Horror Show and the Rocky Horror Picture Show, which is the movie version of the show. And Rocky Horror is kind of one of those things that you either know a lot about or you know very little about. So either way, it's a really fun song and this should be a good time.
In the velvet darkness of the blackest night, burning bright, there's a guiding star. No matter what or who you are.
So the Rocky Horror Show and the Rocky Horror Picture Show, it's the story of Brad and Janet, who are these two very square, sort of upstanding young people. And they are coming from a wedding, driving through the darkness, and their car breaks down and they see a light in a castle, strangely, in the distance. And so they decide to go there to find shelter and to call for a tow truck or a cab or whatever. And then the castle ends up being inhabited by these very strange people who it turns out are actually aliens, and all sorts of crazy, weird stuff happens. And this song, Over the Frankenstein Place, is the transition from the Squaresville world where Brad and Janet live and the crazy, weird location where the rest of the musical happens. And so this song is basically, it's like an incantation. It's sort of mystical and magical and spooky. It's very Halloween-y. And it is seducing Brad and Janet to this weird, alien, sexual, strange world. So the lyrics of the song, it's pretty short lyric-wise. It's 4 paragraphs, basically, with a little bit of repeating. And it has a lot of contrasting between bright and night and dark and light. And the main thing to note about the lyrics for this song, because it's not that rhymey, it's not that much to talk about as far as scanning and rhyming and stuff like that, is it's very purple prose, or actually not prose, it's very purple verse. It is very over the top. It's like music of the night, how sensual and tender or whatever. So this, the opening of the song is, in the velvet darkness, nice, of the blackest night, burning bright, there's a guiding star, no matter what or who you are. Pretty simple, rhymey, timey-wise, but it really lets you know, okay, we are in a different world now. And it's a really good example of how good writing is not just a matter of, let's say some words that make sense, and then if it's a song, having it rhyme or have it fit the scan. It's like making a really strong choice before you start writing. The question is what is the show's voice? The character of Riff Raff is the soloist in this song. And so it's what kinds of words would that person and this world use? It's weird and sensual, overly ornamented. That's a choice that the writer, who's actually Richard O'Brien, who played Riff Raff in the movie and the original stage versions of it, he made this choice to, instead of having it be the previous song was Damn It, Janet, which is this very rhymey, square, kind of fun, peppy song. This is now all of a sudden creepy, spooky, sexy, sensual, but in a really over-the-top way.
Darkness must go down the river of night streaming. Flow Morpheus, slow, let the...
So looking at the lyrics from a technical standpoint, I was kind of wondering whose point of view is this? Who's actually singing? There's a light over at the Frankenstein Place, which is I think the full title of the song, is sort of the combination of Brad and Janet's point of view and the characters in the Transylvanians is what they're called. There's a light over there is something that only Brad and Janet would say because the people who are in the castle are in the castle. There's no over there. They're here. They would be saying there's a light right here at the Frankenstein Place. But Brad and Janet don't know that it's called the Frankenstein Place. It's kind of an interesting choice. Sometimes this kind of thing, if you're looking at it, you could think it's sloppy, but I don't think it is here. I think it's an interesting choice that it's sort of melding in one sentence Brad and Janet's point of view and the Transylvanians' point of view. So rhyming, it's just all couplets, it's just AABB, the blackest night, burning bright, there's a guiding star, no matter what or who you are, over at the Frankenstein Place, burning in the fireplace. But something that's interesting, and because this was written by Richard O'Brien Music and Lyrics, we can really look at, there's something called a melisma. If that's a term that you don't know what it means, it is when one syllable of a word takes place over many syllables of a note. So like riffing is a kind of melisma, but this melisma is written into the score. And so when they're singing, there's a light, it's sort of wandering all around. So why is it wandering around like that? One reason that you would do this is if you are a singer and you want to riff, that is something that you could do, basically to show off your voice, but also to give more emotion or emphasis or whatever to a word. Here, I think it's seducing Brad and Janet to come toward them. So it's like this sort of wafting. Let me play that part right now. It's like in a cartoon where you have a pie on a windowsill and you can see the smell lines that are sort of drifting, and then they go and find whatever character wants to eat that pie, and then it sort of pulls them in. Like, that's exactly what this melisma is doing here. And so then it goes from this very drifty, sort of mellow thing, and then all of a sudden it hits you with that harmony of burning in the fireplace. And so it's such a fun contrast of like hard and soft. And then at the end of the bridge, which is Riff Raff's solo, he has this very long melisma, into my life, and it's a riff over like many bars. Let me see what that is. Yeah, it's like 5 bars, and then sometimes in the live versions of it, the actor will opt up. So it goes to all of a sudden, you're like basically have this octave jump, and it just sounds great. And it really is like seducing the audience and seducing Brad and Janet into this world. Let me play you the awesome opt up. Actually, no, I'll play at the end. Yeah. All right, I'm not going to play it now. And there's something really cool about this song is a siren's call to Brad and Janet, but also to the audience, especially to like the weird and queer theater kids in the audience. It's like when you're watching this as like a teenager with your drama club, which is literally how I first experienced Rocky Horror, was going with my drama club friends in high school. It's like a midnight show, which was very dangerous seeming. And this song is where you're like, oh, I get it. I'm home. This is for us. The reason that this song and the show really speaks to originally like high school weirdo theatery kids is that it is big and theatrical and over the top. It's not sexual. Like there's a big debate online that I was in the middle of recently where somebody was asking whether it was okay for their teenager to be in a community theater production of Rocky Horror. And there was a lot of pro and con. People were like, it's really sexual. It's too sexual for like a 15-year-old to be in. And like the people who have done Rocky Horror are familiar with it are like, it's not sexy. Like it's not a show that turns anyone on. It like uses sexuality and stuff, but in a intentionally ridiculous, fun, over the top kind of way. And as the sort of weird theater kid in high school, like you get it right away, especially with the song, especially at the bridge going into the last chorus. You get it. Like this is fun, theatrical. It's these amazing actors. Susan Sarandon, before she was famous, is in it. Tim Curry obviously giving like this unbelievable Oscar-worthy performance. And so it's all these like really good actors letting their hair down and just taking these big swings. Everybody is making these big, crazy choices. And when you're in high school, if you're like a drama kid in high school, especially if you're talented, that's the kind of acting that you're into at that point. You know what I mean? Like you're not into naturalistic acting. You're into big, crazy choices, and like everything you do, you want to have like a limp and have an accent, and you want to be really good at playing a 60-year-old, because when you graduate from theater school at 22, you're going to be playing 60-year-olds all the time, which is like, of course, not the case. But as an ambitious, talented theater kid, you're looking at Tim Curry in the movie of this and just thinking like, that's acting, man. Which it is. It's an unbelievable performance, but Tim Curry is a really accomplished, serious actor who let his hair down after earning the right to do that. But as like a high school kid, that's all you want to do is like the big over-the-top stuff. But you get that's what this is about. And it's fun also because like other people don't get that's what this is about. There's a lot of like concerned parents who think the show is satanic or weird or whatever. And like as a theater kid, you're like, no, we get it. They don't get it. We're in the club. They're out of the club, which is, exactly what you want as an ambitious, talented, weirdo theater kid. And then there's one other thing, sort of a tangent, which is the audience participation sort of talking back. An example of that is in the song, "In the velvet darkness of the blackest night, burning bright, there's a guiding star." That's the part in the actual song, but then what people say is, "Of the blackest night, burning bright, what's up your ass?" And so in order to do that, everyone has to be sort of counting. It's almost like when you're in a musical rehearsal, and the music director is like to the actors, like, you guys, you got to count. You're not going to be able to come into the right place if you don't count. And sometimes it happens, subconsciously. And so that's what's happening here is like the entire audience is counting correctly so that they can all come in on what's up your ass. So let's talk about the music for the song. So first of all, there's like a bass line of just like bum, 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 just like the root note of each chord really, really low. And it just sounds really cool. And it's just a very like simple, but really effective, like sort of rock thing. So let's just walk through the beginning of the song. So in the Velvet Darkness, just the root chord that we're in, of the blackest night, and then you get to Burning Bright, which is over the 4 chord, which is major normally in this major scale that we're in. And then all of a sudden there's a 4 chord minor substitution. So it goes from the same chord to the minor version of that chord. Let me play what that sounds like. Then we have a substitution for the 3 chord, and all of a sudden that's a major substitution. So it's a surprise. First it's like we're going along, and then we're expecting a major chord, and then all of a sudden we get the rug pulled out and we get a minor chord where we were expecting a major chord. And then a couple bars later, we're expecting a minor chord, and they give us a major chord that would not normally be found in this key. And so just really keeping you like off balance and like, is this a positive thing that they're going to the Frankenstein place? Is this a scary thing that they're going to the Frankenstein place? And the answer is both. And unexpected things are going to happen at unexpected times. So the chorus of this has just these really cool harmonies. And so there's a light over at the Frankenstein place, which is the major root chord spread out among the voices. Let me play that. Then Burning in the Fireplace is that same minor chord for substitution spread out among the people's voices, except it's inverted in such a way that all of a sudden the high note is a little bit higher. You get even more of like a dramatic rock harmony, vocal wall of sound kind of situation. So we play that together. And in fact, all of the back and forth, I was actually kind of not sure whether this is in a major key or it's relative minor. I think I would argue that the song is in a major key except for the bridge, which is in the relative minor. But it's a little bit of a close call. Like I wasn't 100% sure. And so musically, it's not like the most sophisticated score in the world. Like compared to like Sweeney Todd, which is like another dark horror comedy musical. You know, this is not, I mean, what is? But this is not that. Or even like Jim Steinman, who a lot of people think this is, who's the guy who's wrote a lot of Meatloaf songs like Bat Out of Hell and I Would Do Anything for Love, but I Won't Do That. And Meatloaf is in both Jim Steinman stuff and in Rocky Horror. So I think there's a little bit of confusion, but it has a very sort of Jim Steinman feel to it, even though it was not written by Jim Steinman, even though it's kind of playing in the same sandbox. But it's super effective and fun. And the fact that it's a little bit simpler, it makes it easier to sing along to, and it makes it easier for it to be catchy. You listen to the song twice and you're like, okay, got it, love it, can sing along with it. In a car ride, put that on, we're going to belt our guts out. So that's talking about the lyrics and then the music of this song. But the secret sauce for this song, and for many songs, is how pretty and poetic the words are and how unsettling the music is. There's like a lot of examples of how basically the music and the lyrics being kind of opposite from each other can be a really effective tool to have the music and the lyrics working at cross purposes. Like normally we talk about wanting to have the music and lyrics working well together, but it's really cool when you have the irony of pretty words, unsettling music. So some other good examples of irony being used in musicals where the music and the words are either in cross purposes with each other or in cross purposes with what is actually happening on stage or what the audience is feeling. Like Pretty Women from Sweeney Todd, it's just like a beautiful song. The lyrics are beautiful, the music is beautiful, but watching it, we're just anticipating on the edge of our seats that Sweeney Todd is going to slash the throat of the judge. So it's really tense, and it uses the irony of this most beautiful of beautiful songs that just really makes it wrong in a great way. Everything's Coming Up Roses, which we did on the podcast a few months ago, where even though she's saying everything's coming up roses, it's going to be swell, it's going to be great, and the music is mostly backing that up and like rah, 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 what's actually happening is a horror show of this woman who is emotionally abusing her daughter, Hasadiga Ibawai, which we did a couple weeks ago actually on the podcast, right, where the music is really uplifting and peppy, and yet what they're saying is sort of terrible and offensive. Our Time from Merrily We Roll Along, which is a beautiful song out of context, but in the context, it's just so upsetting because you know where these friendships are heading. It's kind of gut-wrenching when you're watching it because the song is so pretty and the context makes it so horrible. And Waving Through a Window, actually, from Dear Evan Hansen is a really good example of this, too, because it's this kid who is, we find out later, spoiler alert for Dear Evan Hansen, who's recently attempted suicide. And, like, he's talking about this, but the music is so peppy. Even though the things that he's saying, that he's learned to slam on the brakes, he's waving through a window like he feels disconnected from the rest of humanity, the music is so catchy and up that it really tricks us into thinking that it's a peppy song, even though, even in context at the moment, we know that this kid is not okay. And then later on, in retrospect, it's like, wow, this kid was really not okay. So a couple of other little odds and ends about this song. So this song it's like a triptych of great songs, which is, it's Over at the Frankenstein Place, then Time Warp, and then Sweet Transvestite, which are just like 3 all-time great songs just smushed right up against each other. There aren't that many examples of like 3 awesome songs back to back. Not like 3 songs that you like, but 3 songs that are each really different from each other and each really serve a story purpose and are just like, 3 of like the big hits from that show. Examples I could think of we're talking about Sweeney Todd a lot, but the end of Act 1 is Sweeney Todd with Pretty Women, Epiphany, and A Little Priest. Like, those are 3 songs that, are 3 of the top 100 songs ever in musical theater in a row at the end of Act 1. The end of the show, Gypsy, You Gotta Get a Gimmick, The Strip, and then Rose's Turn. But there's not a lot of examples. Like, I really was trying to think of other ones. And again, not like 3 songs that you like, but like 3 songs that are each wildly different from each other, that are incredibly important to the story in different ways, and that are all like bangers. So if you ever have a chance to be in Rocky Horror, do it. It is so much fun. I have been in it. I played Riff Raff. It is so much fun to do. It is a party every single time, and you get to show off, and you get to like add notes where you want to add notes, and you sort of tailor everything to the people who are in it. It's just a super, super fun show. This has been the Nothing Like Broadway podcast. I am your host, writer-composer David Rackoff of the upcoming off-Broadway musical, Nothing Like Broadway. Please follow us on Instagram at Nothing Like Broadway. If you have a suggestion for a song in the future, because I would really love some suggestions, because I'm getting a little bit like, what song am I going to do? Email me, nothinglikeBroadway@gmail.com. And if you are listening to this podcast, please give us a review. Right now, stop what you're doing, pause, review us, give us 5 stars, say some nice words about us, hopefully. It really helps us out. So we're going to go out now listening to some of Over at the Frankenstein Place by Richard O'Brien, performed by Matthew Stewart Price and ensemble from the Rocky Horror Show.